But I'll tell you, in my own congregation, there's a family where the father died 3 years ago. Every weekend for 3 years now, people have brought food to that home. Now, if you say to me, they could have done that even if they weren't religious, my answer to you is yes, they could have, but I don't know of anywhere outside of a church, a synagogue, a mosque, where something like that happens over and over and over again. I don't know of anywhere outside of a religious institution where someone puts their hands on their child and blesses them every Friday night. And my father, who passed away in May just a few months ago, if you ask me what was the most precious memory I have of my father, it was his putting his hands on my head every Friday night and blessing me. And had he not been religious, he wouldn't have done it. Now, could he have done it? Could he have put his hands on my head and say, in the name of no God, I bless you? Absolutely. But he wouldn't have. Religion encourages people to certain specific actions in this world, and many of them, most of them, are actions of goodness. There are thousands, millions of people all over this country and all over this world who feed people, who take care of people, who bring water to villages, who organize people. And they do it because they think God called them to do it. That's why they do it. They do it because they think this is the kind of life that you're supposed to lead if, in fact, you're leading the life that God intends for you. That is not nothing. And it's not foolish, and it's not wicked. And it's actually not even an appropriate object for scorn. It's serious people doing what they believe is good in their lives because they think they are something more than an accident of ancient chemistry, because they think, foolish people, that they are in the image of God. And if you say to them, what does it mean that you're in the image of God? Some of them might be so simple-minded as to say it means that God looks like me. But most of them will understand that you're making a metaphysical statement about the part of you that I cannot point to, about the part of you that isn't a component of your DNA, about the part of you that is your spiritual structure. I'm just going to close with this because I got the 1-minute warning. To some extent, this is an argument. But to some extent, and you know this, it's not an argument. It's about the way you see the world. And the way you see the world doesn't pivot on a point. It's not, I never thought of that knockdown, drag out. It has to do with what it is you believe you're here for. Whether your life has a meaning that is beyond you. Whether, in fact, the world is about you or about something greater than you. And whether it is possible to live in such a way as to align yourself not just with what makes you feel good or with what gets the approval of your community, but with what the universe, which I will call God, that is the intelligence that somehow behind all of this launched us all on our way, what that God wants for you. I hope to describe that more, but I hope you also understand that there is something deeper at stake here than whether a clever point has been made or whether a laugh has been scored. What's at stake here is your soul. Thank you.
Well, it was probably about time to introduce a distinction that I promised you earlier, the separation of the idea of God and religion. You can be a deist, as, for example, men like Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson, great men of the Enlightenment, were, and argue from the apparent design and order and harmony of the universe that there must be, or must have once been, a creator. That's a form of belief in God, but it's not religion. To be religious, you have all your work still ahead of you. You have to be able to show that that creator knows who you are, cares what you eat, cares who you sleep with, and in what position, cares who wins which war, answers prayers. You notice nothing from the man of God on these points at all. He's a very weak deist and quite a good moral philosopher. But of religion and God, what did you hear except that God is the universe? Well, that's the other default position. It was actually held by the greatest Jewish thinker of all time, Baruch, later Benedict Spinoza. a pantheist. He said God is everywhere, God is everything, but there's no such thing as a personal God. No one is supernaturally guiding you, like evolution doesn't know you're here. And if you start to demand the intervention of God, you see, or to desire it, then you'll start to demand it. The very next thing you'll do is for your own cult, for your own group, for your own religion. I deliberately didn't specify the innumerable atrocities, and crimes, and miseries that are specific to religion, that have afflicted us down the centuries. I just let you think of them, and you all did, and I won't labor them again. But I knew we would have most of the rabbi's time taken up with good works done by religious people. An absolutely irrelevant point. I mean, if I'm arguing with a Mormon and saying to them, the idea that Joseph Smith, not far from here, found gold plates dictated by God and was led to them by a salamander, and therefore was allowed plural marriage, incest, and land theft. Are you kidding me? This is a sick cult. A crazy, obvious fraud that you can look up in the archives of the local newspapers of New York State. You can see the trick being pulled. The Mormon will say, I know what's coming right away. You should see our missionaries in action in Colombia. We send out young people to do good works in the Andes, in the Himalayas, and so that. No doubt they do. And is their motive just to help? Or is it maybe to make more Mormons and to spread the book? Have you tried it, by the way? Has anyone ever tried Book of Mormon? You know what Mark Twain said about it? Chloroform in print. Millions of copies of it are distributed by these clean-limbed, helpful young people. Is it not the case? I invite the rabbi to comment. Why does Hamas justify its theological and theocratic tyranny in Gaza? Because it's the only provider of welfare and social services, which it is. All over Africa, there are millions of Catholics working every day to make more Catholics. And they say, as their Pope tells them to say, yes, AIDS is very bad, but it's not as bad as condoms are. As a result of which they're responsible for the deaths of millions of Africans, because their work is that of proselytization. Don't call it charity. They're doing it for Jesus. It's not for its own sake, and for it to be moral, to be really human, charitable, to have the things about it that appeal to us, which I'll come to in a moment. It shouldn't be proselytization, should it? We all know, well, those of us who studied poverty and visited the third world, there is only one cure for poverty. And religion is always on such good terms with poverty, don't you notice? Poverty, illness, disease, ignorance, religion always thrives there. They have a sort of partnership with it. It's always their fallback position. For a good reason. The two things feed on each other. There's only one thing that cures poverty, whether it's Bangladesh or Bolivia. It's the empowerment of women. It's the only known cure. If you give women control over their reproductive cycle, take them off the animal cycle that forces them to bear children and doesn't allow them any say in the size of their family, because they have to breed children to replace the ones who are going to die of the filth and the poverty and the disease that the priests have brought in their train. If you take them off that cycle, go back to that village in 5 years, the floor of material well-being and education will already have improved. Throw in a handful of seeds and a bit of credit, the job is done. Name me one religion that argues for the empowerment of women. Now, when you say, Rabbi, really, one should be shocked when a priest commits an act of filthy criminality. I say I'm not shocked at all. Why am I not shocked? Well, if you design, I'll just take a leading example, a salient one, a Roman Catholic Church which preaches that women are vessels of temptation, which insists on celibacy, that makes sex a matter of guilt and shame, that is composed of an all-male priesthood, the whole practice of which is based on a sexual repression. What do you think is going to happen to the children in the care of those people? Don't act surprised. They don't act surprised. They knew it was going on all the time. And they covered up for it. Where is Cardinal Law, may I ask you? Former Prince of the Church in these United States. Why is he, Boston laity want to know this, why is he not in the dock? Because he's in the Vatican. Because he's fled the jurisdiction and been given a sinecure at the Church of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, and voted in the conclave to produce the next pope, the holder of the keys of Peter, the vicar of Christ on earth.